welcome to the Civic. Oh, wait. Hi, welcome to the Civic Pulse with Brian Brady and David Bonior. I should say that in reverse because David's a slightly bigger name than I am. And we have the perfect guest for Martin Luther King Day, Julianne Matuzak. Julie, I don't know if you could use your middle name, but in your email you do. So I called you Julianne. But Julie has been working with David for 40 years, started her career on and off for 40 years, not currently. Started her career as a Vista volunteer, a neighborhood organizer. She's worked for progressive candidates for the Democratic Party for decades. She's also been the executive director of the Interfaith Center for Racial Justice. She's also was the political coordinator for the Michigan Federation of Teachers. And now she's become an elected official, first elected as Macomb County Commissioner, and she is currently on the Clinton Township trustee, an area I was just looking at the election results that went for Trump. And we got to dive in and figure out how you get elected in an area that went for Trump, Julie. But let's start with therapy first. It's Martin Luther King Day. It's Inauguration Day. Julie, David, how are you feeling? How are you getting through today?
I'm going to Canada. There's a group of us after this podcast. A group of us are going to Canada for lunch and hang out a little bit in Windsor and not participate in the inaugural celebrations. I have the greatest respect for the office of president, but the felon that is occupying it as of noon today does not earn my respect. And so I'm focusing on Martin Luther King. And as I said, going to Canada for lunch.
I wish I lived close enough to join you. That's a great way. David, how are you spending this day?
Well, I'm writing. I did a piece this morning. I got up this morning and I just wanted to reflect. It's my son's 52nd birthday today, our youngest son, Andy. And so I wanted to think about the future and the past and the present that we're living in. And so I put something on paper, and I was just telling folks that it got past my editor today. And she said, sure, it's good enough to go out if you want to send it out. So I'll be sending that out and thinking about Andy and talking to him today. And I don't know.
Your editor is your wife, Judy.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
In many ways, she is my editor.
Yeah. Are you going to actually tune in at all for any of the inauguration?
No, I won't do that. I've got, other things to do. I'm working on some issues on Ukraine with some people later today. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I found out, and Julie can reflect on this too if she wishes. One way to deal with all of this is to get involved and do something,
Absolutely.
So
yeah. I mean, I've done 2 Clinton inaugurations, 2 Obama inaugurations. I know what's going on. And I do not need to see this one.
Yeah.
Amen. Yeah, I will not be tuning in. In fact, we are taping this during part of the inauguration, so that was purposely timed as well. We'll send this out. So, Julie, let's start electorally. I want to kind of pick into your activism brain, but also your electoral brain because you've done both in your life. How Macomb County is fascinating because it's always kind of trended along. It goes for Reagan, and then it goes for Clinton, and it goes for Obama, and then it goes for Trump, right? And you and David obviously cut your teeth there and have served there, and you're currently serving there. What for us? I'm a Chicagoan, Evanstonian here. For those living outside of these bellwether counties, what should we know about living there and why people vote the way they do?
Well, this is what I learned working for David. People vote on local issues. It's local. It's jobs. It's the price of groceries. It's the roads. It's local issues. And we were successful. We ran as a little group of Clinton Township Democrats for supervisor and a couple of 4 positions on the Board of Trustees. 2 of us were successful against the tide of Mr. Trump and all of his voters. And we did that because we talk to people. I mean, I say this and people go, oh, this is the most basic step of politics. You talk to people and you listen more than you talk, and you build relationships with them. So I can tell you that all of the senior citizen ladies in Clinton Township voted for me. They love me. They voted for me. I send out Mother's Day cards to them. I don't say elect me. I don't say choose me. I don't say reelect me. I just send them Mother's Day greetings. I go to the senior centers and I talk about, these are services that are available. What can we do to help you? I show up at community events and I meet people and I talk to them and I listen to what their concerns are. This is not rocket science. This is not figuring out all those new technical ways to campaign with the super lists that are sorted and massaged. And this is just talking and listening to people. This really is what it is. And our supervisor candidate got more votes than anybody else on the ballot, except for Mr. Trump. He got more votes than our new congresswoman, the Slotkin. He got more votes than anybody else because that's what he did. I got the most votes for township trustee because that's what I did. I called everybody. I started calling. I was elected in a special election in November. That January, I started calling people. Hi, my name is Julie Matuzak. I was just elected as your township trustee. I just wanted to make sure you had my phone number so you could call me if anything ever comes up. I did that for 2 years. People know who I am and people feel free to call me. The best comment I ever got in the entire election was a lady who called me who had a question about how to vote, like physically, her absentee ballot and things. And she said, I trust you. You'll give me the correct answer. And it's like, that's totally what it's about. And all of those conversations turned into votes. This is not hard to do, but it's a lot of work. And my experience with most candidates, other than David, is that people don't want to put in the work that it requires. I mean, that's the simple explanation.
Does this work as you go up to the state and federal levels, this type of hyper local personal connection campaigning? Just to be devil's advocate, I went and door knocked in Michigan and Wisconsin, and I think they had a little bit of impact, but I think these out of towners coming into door knock had limited impact, and the Trump team's ability to get into your digital media feed and do their campaigning there was much more strategic, I thought. So does this translate to the next presidential election, this strategy?
Only if local Democratic parties are strengthened and improved and supported with resources so that local folks who are going to feel a lot of angst for the next 4 years, the choice is we figure out how to pull them in and activate them, or they're just going to fall away and we're never going to see them again because they've decided this doesn't work. If we can bring local people in to do the local door knocking, that's what makes a difference. I hate all of the national folks who descend upon us and tell us this is where we're opening the campaign office. And these are the 4 people we've hired from who knows where, who don't have a clue about what neighborhood they're going in or what the local issues are. This is the piece we're going to use. This has to be the piece. It doesn't work. Politics has really got to come from the bottom. It's got to come from the grassroots. Mr. Trump was very good at that. There is an army of folks in Macomb County who believe in Mr. Trump completely and who are willing to talk to their neighbors, are willing to go to local community events and speak to people. That's why he was so successful. Him declaring all of those weird things he declares, that's not what did it. What did it was local people talking to their neighbors. And we have to get back to that. I have heard from a number of sources that because Macomb County went so Trump last time, that we're not ever going to see in Macomb County any national resources again, that they're writing us
Wow.
off.
Wow,
I've heard that from a couple of sources. And that's like, I don't care if a Democratic president can't win, although I think a Democratic president could win, but we need to lose by less. I mean, there's a certain amount of that, but until we empower local party committees, and I'm talking about the Democratic clubs, I'm talking about the county committee, the congressional district. If we do that, then we can win nationally and statewide. If we don't do that, then we're doing the same stuff. Here's the cool piece of lit that was designed by somebody in Nebraska, and the consultant from Washington, D.C. that says, this is how you got to campaign, and this is your script you got to use when you go to the door and when you make the phone calls. I don't think that works very effectively. I think you have to get to know your community, and we have 4 years to get to know the community, and we should take advantage of that.
Are either of you supporting anyone for the National Democratic chair race? I get a lot from Ben Wickler. I'm like, okay, Wickler seems to get it, but I don't know the other candidates. Are you, David? Have you endorsed?
Is Martin from Minnesota? I can't remember.
Yes,
I
he's
kind
from
of like
Minnesota.
him. Yeah. So, but that's who I would be for. Anyway.
Yeah, I will admit I have sort of dropped out of the Democratic Party. I mean, I'm still a member, but I go to my local club. I go to the county meeting. I occasionally go to the congressional district meeting. I have no plans of going to the state convention to elect the new state party chair. They just have not demonstrated to me that they care about local stuff enough. And so, maybe it's a function of being 70 and I'm just tired of doing this stuff. But I'm not spending my time with them. I'm going to focus on local elections because I think that's where it's at.
And I think that message you just gave, Julie, is actually probably one of the reasons we've lost so much participation in the Democratic Party. People got tired. Nothing was changing, and they're not going to spend time on it. And there's less enthusiasm politically, I think, from my experiences in Macomb County with, for instance, the labor movement as well. So all these pieces that were part of the Democratic coalition, they need rejuvenation. And it basically centers where you said it centers in the neighbor, your family and your neighbors. That's kind of where you got to start. That's where most of us started in politics, right? Well, we'll
absolutely
start our family and our people who know us. And then we'll try to get to know other people in good ways that they will have confidence in us because they'll believe us like that lady believed in you. And you can go forward from there. And then you build 10, then you build 20, and then you build 100, then you build 1,000. And pretty soon you've got an organization that can stand the winds of a demigod like Trump. Stand up against it.
And I'm not in any way saying don't do social media, don't do any of that stuff. I mean, the targeting is very smart with lists and things, but it has a place. And the place is sort of, for me, the frosting on the cake. That's what pushes people over in the last little minute, the people that haven't been paying attention. It helps campaigns when I get a list of folks who are occasional voters, and I can focus on them in the last 6 weeks of a campaign. That's great, but that's frosting. But the foundation has got to be your neighbors, your family, really local stuff. That's, I think, what moves people, nationally or locally.
I want to dive. You guys worked on the Bonior campaign was one of the great congressional campaign operations of all time. I grew up in the Abner Mikva campaign house, which had sort of a similar. One thing I noticed about the MICFA campaign, and from stories from the Bonior, is that they were social entities too. People found community there and identity. And have to say, I don't like the Trump campaign, but people find community and identity within them. And and Democrats kind of have become the party of scolds you don't want to hang out with in some ways. How do we get back being a party where you want to go to have lunch with your fellow Democrats and hang out and do some things? What is this? What is the magic sauce there from the Bonior campaign days?
Well, I think the magic sauce is that we did hard work together. I mean, I think that's the magic sauce. I see all the local committees and groups holding, get-togethers at the bar. Well, that's fine, but that's like a byproduct. I go to maybe meet some new people, but it's when you're actually figuring out how to do this 10,000 piece mailing or whatever it is, that you're in the trenches and you're working together. We're bagging trees. We're having a good time. We're talking. We get to know each other. I mean, the core of my campaign are Bonior folks. I mean, and we've added people over time, and we have to figure out how to add more new people. But you have fun, and it's great fun. I mean, when my volunteers are in a room working on something for me, it's a riot. I mean, people are having fun. They enjoy each other. In on-campaign years, we try to go to dinner once a month because we like each other. But that comes from having worked together. You can't just show up for beers and brats at the local pub and make that kind of connection. I don't think that's an intellectual connection, which is good. But you get your hands dirty. That's a real connection.
And to take that a step further, Julie, that connects also with the labor community, the education community, the environmental community. They have functions all the time. And if you can get your people involved with them, it's like talking to the neighborhood that you talked about, or
right
in the neighborhood. That's how you create the dynamics to grow and to create a situation in which you can, as I said earlier, withstand the storms when they arise.
Right. It's the multiplier factor.
Right.
I go to labor things. I bring people with me. They get to know. We work on a joint project. It's getting to know people. Friendship, even on a personal level, doesn't happen the first time. It's very rare that the first time you meet somebody, you're like connected. But over time and experience and life, you get to know and develop a friendship. It's no different with political stuff. People have to know who you are and experience something with you.
Right. And church is a good place too. Church or synagogue or mosque. I mean, these are spiritual temples, these places, and spirituality is the center of it. And that's more than the sauce. That's really the heart of basically what a political organization needs to have, or a religious organization, or if you have a good labor movement. Judy's worked for the teachers as political director. She knows that that's really key to have that spiritual piece in it. That's always there. It's just a matter of finding it and working people to get it.
Exactly.
So
I used to train people as part of my work at the teachers union. I would train local leaders on how to talk about values, not how to talk about the issue, not how to talk about organize. How do you talk about values? Because if we state our values and someone goes, "Oh, I really agree with that," then you got them. Then you can talk about how to organize something.
Give us a little training session on that, Julie. Talk about your values. We're your constituents, and we're going to vote on your trustee election. How do you talk about your values? Give us a little 101 here.
One of my prime values, again from David, is about ethics. In the township, we've had some real issues around ethics. When I first got there, I said I would like all of the businesses that receive $20,000 or more listed on a public website. And people were like, well, why would you do that? Because I want people to see where the township spends its money. And we accomplished that. The second thing, though, is that we have an ethics statement that all elected officials have to sign. But it doesn't include any of your nonprofit or community groups that you belong to unless you get paid. Well, the prime example of that is we had a supervisor who was on the board of the local ambulance company. The township contracts with this ambulance company, but he never has to say he's on the board. Well, if you're in a decision-making mode for a nonprofit, you should have to declare that. So I'm on the board of the Detroit Institute of Art. When that comes up for discussion, I always say in front of the cameras, I'm a board member of the DIA. He never did that with this ambulance service, and that was money exchanging hands. So when I talked to constituents about that, that was a big point. It's like, yeah, we need stronger ethics rules. So talking about ethics and being fair and open and allowing for an even playing field for competition among contractors, everything should be bid out. That was a whole section of my campaign that people really responded to.
Interesting, because you just did that where you took a stand on ethics, but you were also able to critique your opponent in a strong way, right?
Well, he was not running again, so he was my example. But yes, he was mad at me.
Here's your foil. That's with Trump, this whole crypto coin that I don't know if you followed that story, the Trump crypto coin that he owns a huge chunk in. You can now, if you're the Chinese government, give a few $1 billion to him through this coin and have it be untraceable. So even though you're talking about Clinton Township, I actually think what you just said there, Julie, should be the national election message too.
It totally should be the national election message because people care about fairness. They care about openness. They care about integrity. And talking about the fact that all of these billionaires who all have a personal stake in what the federal government does are now sort of directing things. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about that a lot. I think President Biden hit the right tone when he was talking about the oligarchy that's being created and the technical industrial complex. I think we need to talk about ethics because ethics is a value that crosses all the lines and people respond to it really well. And this is an administration that seems to struggle with the concept of ethics.
You know, who's really been good on writing about this is Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor, and I read his stuff in the daily. And this whole idea of oligarchy is fascinating. It's been around forever, but it's got a name now, but it's always had a name actually. But it's with the people that Trump has surrounded himself with, particularly. It's becoming easier now to reach people on it, the Musks and some of these other capitalists. So, yeah, I think you're right about that.
This feels like the beginning of a klepto presidency is what I think we should need to call it. There's just going to be a lot of people feeding at the trough, right?
Well, and people have asked me about, how they're feeling worried and bad. And in some ways, I'm sort of less worried because all of these folks have so much self-interest. I don't see how they're going to effectively work together. I think that some bad things will happen and I think some people will get hurt. But overall, when you start looking at all of these competing interests he has lined up in his cabinet, I don't know how they'll get anything done because they really are competing interests. So we'll see. I'm less depressed than I used to be.
let's close with sort of Martin Luther King focus and activism and organizing. We're talking about a person who never held elective office, but shifted the policies and politics of this country in an extremely dramatic way. Maybe one of the top 3 or 4 people of the 20th century in terms of shifting American politics. And obviously, it wasn't just King; it was a movement that he was at the face of. A lot of my children are in their 20s, and a lot of activists I know in their 20s and 30s, Julie, and you know these folks too, disdain electoral politics and the two-party system, and it goes to things like Gaza and areas where they just see both parties failing. How do we marry the progressive worlds of progressive electoral politics and progressive organizing, and hold it together so that we can win in both the organizing elements and the electoral elements? It's a multi-part question.
I have no idea. I struggle with it. I mean, my daughter is 27, 28, so she's in that age range, and she has certainly done her share of activism, although she swore off politics when she was about, I don't know, 13 or so, and was not coming to any more meetings with me ever. But when she got to college, she was totally disheartened that her cohort was not voting and wasn't just complaining, and she couldn't stand that. So she became a one-woman organizing team at Xavier University. But it's very hard. And I actually remember the moment when it occurred to me. I was working as a neighborhood organizer in Grand Rapids. I had been doing work about a whole range of local issues. I'm really a local focused person. And, you know, we're getting people to go to the city council meeting, and we're staging protests, and we're writing op-eds, and we're doing all the organizing stuff. And I remember the moment it occurred to me that this isn't enough, that other people are making the decision, and we need to figure out how to become the people making the decisions. And it was like a crystal clear moment for me that, oh, we have to care about electoral politics. And I helped a woman run for the city council, and that was, you know, then I moved here and worked for David, and it was sort of the beginning. So I don't know if it's just a realization people have to come to that, like it or not, someone is going to make a decision, and they hold elections whether you participate or not. And we used to talk about that at the Student Summit a lot, that they're holding the election. You can choose to vote or not vote, but someone's going to be elected, and that person is going to make decisions that are going to affect your life. And you can either give up that power and let them make decisions, or you can work to elect somebody that reflects your values. And I think it has to be almost that sort of realization. I don't think you can demonstrate that, well, look, we voted for this person and then nothing changed. Well, sometimes you vote for people and nothing changes, but you got to at least come to the realization that the election's going to be happening whether you vote or not.
David, you were an organizer congressman in some ways. Especially I think about your Central American work, because that was near and dear to my heart as a young person in the 80s. How did you straddle those worlds of, because you saw it as a yes and not as an either or, and,
right.
and how did you do that so well?
You mean the organizing? How did I do that so well?
I see so many of our politicians get elected and then they stop organizing. They just sort of organize to get elected and don't issue-based organize.
It's work.
Mm-hmm.
and you know, it's you know, you have to get it in your head that it's going to take some time, but you have to understand that there's rewards with it as well. Other than winning, there's just rewards of creating the social and political network that we've been talking about. So getting something done, you have to be organized. Nobody paying attention to you if you think you're scattered or you're not moving in a direction. And I just always kind of, I guess, had the idea that if I'm going to get something done, I better write it down on paper and talk to the right people and put together a plan and get people to work to implement the plan. And if they like it, and if they don't like it, why don't they like it? And maybe we can change it to be attractive to them. And maybe they make sense and maybe we don't. I don't know. It's like, for instance, I'm working on this project now. I started out in politics working on veterans issues. I was a Vietnam era veteran. I wasn't a combat veteran or anything, but I was there for 4 years, not in Vietnam. I was in the United States, but I was working with people who were there and back and forth. And as an Air Force person, I was involved. So when I got to the Congress, I found that with all these problems that we had, the veterans weren't getting. They weren't getting their health care benefits. They weren't getting their education benefits they were promised. They had Agent Orange and all these problems and PTSD. And man, I said, wow, what's going on here? And we found out that the people that were running these issues in the Congress, the chairmen, there weren't any women that were in power then, were turning they were for the war and they were against people who were fighting the war, which was really crazy, but that's the way it was. So we had to figure out a way to get around these old chairmen and get things done. So I got involved in that, and we did it. I befriended Tip O'Neill, and he agreed with me. We found a way to go to other committees to get things done. We organized around the people who were the problem. So, today I'm doing that same kind of crazy thing. I say crazy, but I get myself involved in all these things in Ukraine. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way in which to help Ukrainian veterans, people who are dying, wounded, watching their fellow combatants die. And how do you get the health care, the psychological aid, and the financial aid, and all those things to them? And we did it here. I mean, we turned it around in the U.S. after Vietnam. And why can't we use that as a base to try to help our allies there? So anyway, I'm involved in the middle of that thing too. So I'm putting together Vietnam veterans and Iraqi and Afghan veterans here in the United States. And then I'm putting together veterans in Ukraine together, and we're talking.
You're still organizing, David.
Still organizing.
It's what we do. It's what we do. It's who we are. I just want to go back just a second. When we talk about the youth movements who are out there now, advocating, protesting, what makes me frustrated about them is I don't know what the end goal is. I don't know what they want. I mean, I know what they want in a big picture, but in some ways, organizing goes back to the stuff that we probably all learned, which is mapping out the power and the decision makers. And a perfect example is here. There was some time ago, but someone who was running for state rep, and they truly horrible person. And they owned a company. And so a group of people came to Mount Clemens and flyered the whole area about how terrible he was and boycott his company. You know what his company made? His company made racks for industrial warehouses. Who of us has an industrial warehouse that's going to boycott buying his racks? That was, to me, just a total clear example of nobody having thought out what the pressure points are, who the decision makers are, and doing an actual power analysis. And people need to do that. I love to protest. It's great, makes my spirit soar. My heart feels happy, but I need to know what the end product is, what the end achievement is. And too much I see people doing it for almost the social aspect of protesting, but not what can we accomplish. And that frustrates me about some of the young people I see organizing.
it makes me think of King, who was imperfect like all of us, but he always thought in terms of power analysis and his
Right.
actions. He was trying to take action that addressed a certain power block that he saw, and sometimes he succeeded, and sometimes he came to Chicago and failed. But he was always doing his power analysis.
Yeah.
Let's end on a faith-based question, because King used to say that it was his line about faith is there's no atheists when you really get into battle. People find their faith really quickly. And you've been the ED of an interfaith organization. So for both of you, how does your faith intersect with your political action and organizing?
Well, I've become a total church lady in my old age.
It's a good story. Tell it.
What's that?
You have a good story about that. Tell it.
Yeah. So I mean, born and raised Catholic, and always believed and still believe that, the greatest commandment is to take care of your neighbor the way you would like to be taken care of. Was Catholic, am Catholic. I guess the Pope considers me Catholic and forever. But sort of pulled away because the church was not speaking to me. And when I was the director of the Interfaith Center for Racial Justice, I did a lot of work with Vincent Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church. They were great people. I always felt welcome there. I loved it there. We did a lot of good work in the community together. And then, I raised my daughter and life goes on, and whatever. And then I pulled away from the Catholic Church for a number of years, especially during COVID. It just didn't speak to me. But I was doing a community event, and a lot of the people from Vincent were there. And they said, we're doing church in the parking lot next week. Why don't you come? And I thought, sure, that'd be great. And so I'm sitting on the hood of my car, as we all were, or in lawn chairs, watching service progress, and the men of praise were singing. And I sort of felt God hit me upside the head and said, what are you doing? You're looking for a church. You like these people. You're very welcome here. So I am a member of an African Methodist Episcopal Church, where I'm on the board of trustees.
Another trusteeship for you.
But it's great because they care about the community. They do a lot of outreach. We do a lot of activity in the community. It's the stuff I love to do. And it's great to sort of immerse yourself in another worldview that's not from the little white girl in northern Michigan. It's great. I love it. But it totally is center to my life. The commandment to take care of your neighbors as you take care of yourself. That's why I do what I do.
You kind of sort of a mic drop moment, that story, Julie, on Martin Luther King Day. I'm starting to go back to church. Donald Trump has driven me back to church. I'm now going across the street to my.
Yeah, I led the prayer at church yesterday. And my message was about heroes and sheroes, and how I believe they're put in our path to remind us when we've strayed off the path to sort of get back there and keep doing the work. And we ended when we prayed for the firefighters and the people who lost their homes and people in conflict areas, and that they find the courage to drop their weapons. And I mean, it was a great prayer, if I say so myself. But we ended by praying for the new administration, that they govern with justice and compassion and fairness. And that's what you got to do.
Let's hold them accountable if they don't, right?
Exactly.
Well, David, I see why you were such a good organizer, because every time I meet your former staff and campaign workers, they're incredible organizers. So you surrounded yourself with amazing organizers, and that's why you could win in Macomb County. Well, let's end on that note. Happy Martin Luther King to you both, and Julie, you're the perfect guest for this difficult day. So thanks for inspiring us.
Well, happy to come back anytime. As I said, I have many opinions on many subjects.
We will take you up on that offer.
Thanks, Julie. Really appreciate it.
All right, everybody have a great day.
You too.
You
Just
too.
don't
Take
watch the
care.
news. That's what I say. Just don't watch the news.
Yep.